These statues, with their enigmatic expressions, were the inspiration for Shelley's Ozymandias sonnet, Ozymandias being the Greek name for Ramesses II, and when pondering these mighty works, you can begin to understand the iconic phrase from that sonnet, quote, "My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair." End quote. For the best technological analysis of the precision manufacturing techniques that must have been used to shape these behemoths, once again we turn to the work of Christopher Dunn. By analysing a huge array of photographs that he captured during several visits to the statues, Dunn has shown that some incredibly complex geometric engineering and precision manufacturing was involved in creating these statues. Not only that, but this plan was executed to perfection again and again. We start this analysis with the hedjets and the peshents, which are the elongated crowns that sit on top of these statues representing Upper and Lower Egypt, and several of these crowns have been detached from these statues. Dunn shows how they are the result of an extremely complex series of compound radial curves and spherical geometry that's been made into 3 dimensions, and then these precise shapes were repeated from crown to crown. There are no flat surfaces here. This is something far more challenging, yet the smoothness and the consistency of the arcs in the shape are basically perfect, and they seem to be replicated exactly from one example to the next. To make these shapes, radial cuts need to be made in a fashion such that the radius stays consistent, but the center of the radius arm that's making the cut moves, and moves precisely in 3 dimensions. The crown appears perfectly symmetrical from side to side. If you take a photo lined up from the front, then reverse the image and lay it transparently down on the center line of the original image, the sides line up exactly as Dunn shows here using this technique. His analysis of the spherical, radial, and elliptoid geometry required to make these crowns is very thorough, and it's something that I will get into in some depth in a dedicated video. But his conclusion as to what this infers in terms of the capability of the builders of these crowns is worth sharing. Quoting Chris Dunn from his book Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt. Quote, "The design and precise geometry that was crafted into Ramses' crown is a symbol of a society that was disciplined in precision engineering and craft. The pieces could not have been created without the aid of some kind of mechanical device that guided the tool along a prescribed contour. Neither was this mechanical device a simple machine. Figures 1.29 and 1.30 illustrate a path of the center point of an arc extrapolated from the geometry of the crown. If the designers were to convey to the engineers or craftsmen what they wanted, drawings similar to figure 1.29 and 1.30 may have been used. The design is one thing, but devising from the drawing a means of cutting the design into granite, with the exactitude noted in the photographs and transmitted through the palms of my hands to my brain as I felt each surface, is entirely another matter. Creating such an object today using modern computers, software, and computer numerically controlled or CNC machines would present some significant challenges, to be sure, but not as much head-scratching would be involved today as there would have been 49 years ago when I first entered the manufacturing trade as a young apprentice. Applying the tools of 50 years ago to the Ramses challenge would severely tax craftsmen skilled in manufacturing, and the tools and instruments necessary to ensure such precise geometry would not even be in a sculptor's toolbox." End quote. This is a profound statement. A professional, expert, and well-credentialed manufacturing engineer is stating that we could likely not have created such objects even 50 years ago. Dunn's work on the technological characteristics of these statues should be the basis for much further analysis and study, but as far as I can tell, he's the only one who's really made the effort so far. The next time somebody scoffs at the idea of ancient high technology, who tells you that they think they know how this was done, that the ancients just applied time, patience, and chisels to the problem, ask them to replicate one of these crowns. It would be quite the challenge, even at 1/50th of the scale, to create something that exhibits the same precision, dimensions, and proportions of the original object. Ask them to do it in granite, by hand, using the tools found in the archaeological record, and I think we'd start to see some of the truth behind what we're really looking at here. This truth becomes only more astounding when a similar analysis is made to the faces of the Ramses statues. Here, once again, we see evidence for advanced three-dimensional geometric precision and remarkable symmetry made into huge granite objects that has been replicated over and over again. These statues, be those at Luxor, Karnak, or at the Ramesseum, appear to have all been cut and shaped to the same plan, to the same face, and then that work was carried out with an absolutely mechanical degree of precision. Chris Dunn has derived many different aspects of complex geometry in the construction of the faces, and he's shown that core sacred geometry and mathematical principles like the Fibonacci sequence, Pythagorean right-angle triangles, the golden ratio, and even the flower of life are reflected in the stone. Varying degrees of radial cuts were consistently made into the granite, and the axes of these cuts were blended to form compound surfaces that curve in 3 dimensions, making up the features of the face. These complex surfaces were precisely inversed and replicated from side to side. These faces are symmetrical, and the implications of this when applied to the manufacturing techniques used to make them are, quite frankly, staggering. This near-perfect symmetry is not a characteristic of human faces, nor is it one that we find in other statues from other cultures, and the precision of this symmetry makes this achievement exponentially more difficult to replicate. By doing the same experiment of reversing a photograph and overlaying it transparently onto the centerline of the original, we can see this symmetry in action. Centerline measurements back up this observation, and what is even more astonishing is that this was repeated time and again across multiple statues. Just look at the consistent profile ratio shown here between the eyes and the mouth across multiple statues. How could these have been made? The only way we can accurately and consistently create such complex surfaces today is with computer design and mechanical guidance in CNC machines that are basically milling machines that operate in 3 dimensions. How does this process work for something that is 40, 60, or 90 feet tall and weighs anywhere between 400 and 1,000 tons and is made from granite? Further quoting Chris Dunn from his book. Quote, "The contoured surfaces of Ramses' symmetrical face would be familiar to designers of everyday products that are created routinely today with computer algorithms known as non-uniform rational B-splines, or NURBS, which allow them to smoothly morph one shape to another with unbroken perfection. By using NURBS, computer-aided design programs create contours of airplane wings, turbine blades, and even the computer keyboard at your fingertips. Surfaces are now routinely designed and manufactured to the apparent precision of Ramses' head. Incredibly, the ancient Egyptians were also able to routinely craft Ramses' head and achieved the same results again and again from the north to the south of their linear Nile-based empire. The stunning implications are analogous to looking through the static interference pattern of time and confusion and seeing the elegance and precision that is normally built into a Lexus in a place where only the most rudimentary techniques of manufacturing are thought to have existed. The techniques that the ancient Egyptians are supposed to have used, those taught to us in school, would not produce the precision of a Model T Ford, let alone a Lexus or a Porsche." End quote. Chris Dunn has been working from extensive and well-aligned photographs of the faces, but I want to make the point again, how much do you think we could learn with a modern analysis using modern metrology tools and high-resolution 3D scanning? Some scanning of objects like these has actually been done, but it seems to have been done at quite a low resolution and done more for the purposes of artistic modeling rather than precise metrology. It's certainly a good start, however, and I have to think that taking this type of analysis to the next level should really not be particularly difficult for our archaeological institutions and their authority figures, if only they were actually more interested in it. I do want to make the point that these statues are not like other statues that come from later cultures. I think we can all agree that stylistically, ancient Egypt stands alone. These are precision objects as much as they are artwork, and in this characteristic they are distinct and separate from the classic and evocative beauty of more modern artwork, like that of the Renaissance period. They really aren't the same thing. I've heard many people suggest that because sculptors like Michelangelo could create artwork as incredible as the statue of David, then surely this is proof that artists can do anything. I've been to Florence and I've seen David. It's a profoundly beautiful achievement, but it's just not the same thing as the mechanical precision and symmetry reflected in the Ramses statues. David is utterly and emotionally human in its lack of symmetry, whereas Ramses appears to be so inhuman or perhaps beyond human because of its symmetry. And what's more, it's made out of granite. This substance is orders of magnitude more difficult to work in than marble, and modern sculptors understand this. Chris Dunn contacted contemporary sculptor Mike Leckey, whose beautiful touch in marble resulted in pieces like this one, called Bather in Marble. I'm quoting now from a letter from Mike Leckey sent to Chris Dunn on the subject of the Ramses statues. Quote, "Dear Chris, thank you for this opportunity. I've been interested in Egypt and its sculpture since I was a child. As a stone sculptor, I can say that the granite of the Ramses head and figures is an extremely hard stone, and I believe tools much more durable than hardened copper chisels must have been used in the carving process. It would be necessary for me to upgrade my normal tools to carve such granite. My modern diamond blades and grinding points would be worn out before the head was started. The ancient carvers must have had advanced technology. Although the ancient Egyptians had stone chisels and hammers, which could cut the extremely hard granite, even with an army of disposable labour, completing 4 large sculptures exactly alike with hand tools would take more time than we can conceive of as possible. Modern man with all his modern tools would be challenged to finish 1 Ramses in a generous timeline. Creating 4 of them as large as they are, all the same, seems almost impossible. Best regards, Mike Leckey." End quote. So, what can we infer from all this? It should be clear at this point that there is utterly no chance these statues, the columns, or the precision boxes and vases could have been so precisely and repeatedly fabricated by a Bronze Age culture using the tools that are found in the archaeological record. An analysis of these objects isn't proof in and of itself for a lost civilization that predates the dynastic Egyptians, but it is pretty solid proof that they required forms of high technology to manufacture, regardless of whether or not we found any tools like that. At the same time, we need to balance this conclusion against the fact that we know an awful lot about the dynastic Egyptians. We know about their capabilities, about their daily lives, and we have their tools in the archaeological record, and none of it explains the manufacturing of these precision objects. Despite this, our academics insist that they built everything we see in ancient Egypt, but you just can't have this both ways. One of these 2 premises has got to give, which leaves us with some pretty simple options. Either we're completely, woefully incorrect about the capabilities and the tools of the early dynastic Egyptians, and they did in fact have advanced capabilities that rival our own, and they were able to make these precision objects. Or we're wrong in saying that they created them at all. To insist that both statements are true, that the dynastic Egyptians both made all of these objects and did so with the primitive tools of the Bronze Age, is logically inconsistent, and it makes no sense at all. Yet this contradiction is exactly the ground that our mainstream academic Egyptologists and archaeologists choose to occupy. Why do you think they don't want to discuss or investigate the nature of precision and technology evident in the manufacturing of these artifacts? Almost every expert who investigates these precision objects, the engineers, stonemasons, the architects, they all recognize the achievement they represent, and they inherently understand just how far out of a Bronze Age culture's reach that they are. By acknowledging that there's a degree of sophistication and high technology evident in these artifacts, then you're acknowledging that our current story for them just doesn't make any sense. Perhaps this is why it seems to be so difficult to get our academics' attention on this issue, as it leads to some very confronting questions for the Orthodox story of history.